Before we begin this episode, there's a few things going on at the university at the moment for technicians that I want to make sure that you don't miss. The first is that the Career Pathway Working Group are doing a bit of engagement at the moment to make sure that they're taking all technician views into account through their process. There's a survey they've put out that's been emailed out to the mailing list. If you fill that out, you can have your say and let them know what matters to you. And they're also doing meet and greet sessions at every campus over the next few weeks. Well, the details for that are on our website and should be in your inbox if you're a part of the mailing list. The other thing, of course, is that Technician Week begins next month. Events are now open for booking. And again, the details are on the website. So do go check those out and make sure and sign up to your events so we know how much cake to order. Now, on with the show. Hello and welcome to Technically Edinburgh, the podcast for technicians by technicians at the University of Edinburgh. My name is Charli Corcoran.
And my name is Lee Murphy. And today we have the College Registrar from the College of Medicine and Veterinary Medicine, Anne-Marie Coriat. Welcome, Anne-Marie.
Thank you.
So Anne-Marie did her degree at the University of Wales in Chemistry and Environmental Science. And before she had a number of technician posts, including at the Baylor College of Medicine in Texas and also in the NHS in Manchester, before she did her PhD in developmental biology at the University of Manchester. She then had a number of jobs in science strategy at places like the Medical Research Council and the Research Council UK, with roles in infrastructure and planning, and then roles in the Wellcome Trust, with work around research careers and research culture. And in 2022, she joined the University of Edinburgh as the College Registrar. So welcome, Anne-Marie. And my first question is exactly what is a College Registrar?
What is a College Registrar? Really good question. I'm not sure there's an exact science around that, Lee, actually, in many ways. It's the chief operating lead for the college, and so all sorts of things come across the desk. I guess to a degree you could think about it as the sort of the route finder and the conductor in one sort of bundle. So it's really how we make the operational side of college work to deliver on the academic strategy. And so that encompasses everything from innovation to teaching to research to delivery of sort of, core services, helping the schools work through. And as we go through the current challenges the higher education sector is experiencing at the moment, then that's about, how do we actually work as effectively and as efficiently as possible and make sure that we're still able to deliver on the science and the innovation and the teaching. All the important points. And for me, actually, one of the critical things there that I've been really trying to promote hugely across college is the sense that actually it's a team sport in many ways. The way we work has to be as a team. And so bringing together professional services at the same table in all instances as academic staff to help shape our future is critical.
And what does a typical day look like for you?
Well, my typical day, I've just had a week off over Easter, which has been delightful. I'm not sure that's typical, but it does mean the inbox is a complete disaster. But the sorts of things that we're looking at, I suppose, are, the modernisation that's happening across college, what's the shape and the size of how we organise ourselves through to, looking at what we're doing around our portfolio review for teaching, thinking about how we're putting together our budgets and the challenges that we're facing collectively across the higher education sector there, and then dealing and sort of just chatting to people about how they're prioritising various workloads and making sure that that's all linked into the way that the college runs. So I don't think there's a typical day. It generally involves a lot of talking, a lot of meetings, a lot of actions that accrue. And I hope, actually it's also about creating the vision for, what people are aiming for. It's very easy when we get bogged down in our inboxes to forget why we're actually doing something. So I try and make sure at least part of my day is helping us lift our heads up and think about where we're heading.
And you started out as a technician, is that right?
I did, yes.
What kind of roles did you have?
So as Lee sort of outlined at the beginning, my very first role was as a technician in Baylor College of Medicine. and this goes back an awful long way, to when PCR was not done by machine and when you poured your own sequencing gels, and all that sort of thing. So I was doing a lot of work actually on a project involving G proteins. So I was labeling my P32 myself, for all sorts of various studies. And I was also, I was the PCR machine. So I was moving tubes from hot block to hot block. Latterly, after that, I came back to the UK and worked in the health service, and I was a biochemistry technician working on the sort of reception desk, running analysis and sort of clinical tests, and did on-call. And then I worked in a developmental biology lab in Manchester. So quite a wide variety of different technical roles, yeah.
And did you find there was a big difference between working as a technician in America and working as a technician here in the UK?
I think working in America and working in the UK, whether you're a technician or not, I think is quite different. I think, the work culture in the US is quite different in many ways. You get 10 days annual leave a year. That's something that really makes people focus their minds. None of these bank holiday bits and pieces on top of all the other stuff. It was quite a long time ago, Charlie, but I think the culture is still a bit different in many ways. But I don't think that was being a technician per se, as being in a different country with different backdrop.
That's fair. So how did you get into being a technician in America?
Being a technician in America. So I did my degree, as Lee said, in chemistry and environmental sciences at the University of Cardiff, Wales. And that was looking mostly at sort of mass spec, actually, as it happens, long time ago. And what I wanted to do was see if I could apply that in different settings. And one of the people who was my supervisor for my final year project took a role in Houston, Texas at Baylor College of Medicine. And we talked about doing a PhD. So I thought that's what I was going to go and do. And it turns out that you need to do your homework, really, before you go and sort these things out. The US system is very, very different. So that was trial and error. And I thought, well, actually, there's a lot to learn here. And so I was fortunate enough to get a job as a research technician in the lab of Lutz and Marielle Birnbaumer, who were G protein experts at the time. So it was not planned, I think, is the short answer to that. But it was probably one of the best things I did, because it gave me a really good grounding in terms of how a laboratory works, how it contributes to the major sort of discoveries we're trying to make, and that there are all different sorts of parts to it which need to come together.
You eventually did do your PhD in Manchester.
I did.
But after you'd finished that, you didn't kind of go the usual academic route. You kind of went more into that science strategy kind of route. Like what made you on that?
So, I mean, having gone from chemistry to G proteins, I then worked in the health service when I got back in. That was a job to sort of help me, and that was a clinical biochemist, a trainee clinical biochemist. Wasn't really where I wanted my career, and what I was keen to do was, if you like, get additional qualifications and do some more research. So looked around, and in fact, my PhD was on sex determination in alligators. So rather different from anything I'd done previously, and that was, I suppose, the foray into developmental biology. And what I figured from doing that was that, again, there were all sorts of things about that PhD which I'd never had to think about before. So I went out and I got my material for the experimental work I did from Louisiana. So I'd go out to Rockefeller Wildlife Refuge on the Gulf of Mexico, collect alligator eggs with the help of the Fish and Wildlife Service, bring them back, do the incubation, but I have to do all the CITES planning, so the endangered species planning to bring the material back in. And it was all that sort of collective organisation of stuff that was particularly exciting. And what I realised was that actually I didn't want to pursue a career that would lead me more and more focused into a particular area. What I wanted to do was something that would allow me to join the system up, or, contribute in quite a sort of general way to the way in which things were working. And I was particularly lucky to get a role within the Medical Research Council at the time, actually looking after the developmental biology portfolio as it happened. And so that was my my sort of entry into, actually how does funding and the research system work more generally.
And do you think there was any things that you learned from being a technician that you could bring into that role?
100%. I mean, people are people and they've all got different skills. And I think that sort of technical backdrop was really crucial. And I think, it's the planning, it's the staying ahead of all the technology, it's thinking about, it's problem solving roles in many ways, isn't it? It's, you're faced with an awful lot of moving parts, I found, and the question as to how you navigate through and come out the other side and interpret the data. There's data interpretation in all of that. You don't believe the first thing that comes across your desk. You ask questions about it and try and find out, what might influence it. So I think yes, and I think the other one that it taught me was actually understanding of how the system comes together, because it's not just, it's not just one role that makes it work. The technician, I think, is a critical linchpin, contributing to teaching, to research, to innovation, to actually the day-to-day. And actually an underrated role in many instances is, the welfare and the health and the community of the environment in which you're working. Multifaceted. So yes, in short, it did teach me quite a lot.
So I think there's a lot there me and Charlie can agree with, and I think we're nodding away there. So the first time I became aware of you, Anne-Marie, was before you came to Edinburgh, and that was because of your role in the talent report.
Yep.
So the talent report was sponsored by Research UK, and it was to look at technical careers, and you had a role in that. Could you tell us a bit more about that, please?
Yeah, sure. So the Talent Commission came about, after some incredible work, which started, gosh, I can't remember how long, is it 15, 20 years ago, by Kelly Veer and Leszek Borusewicz, who at the time was he was a Vice-Chancellor at Cambridge, having come from the Medical Research Council as Chief Executive. And the notion was actually, what could we do for technicians, because they're such a pivotal part of the research ecosystem. And at that time, I was looking after careers in the MRC. And that included sort of, I won't use the phrase, but, the phrase that's used is alternative. Quite frankly, it is a very sensible and important career route. And as part of that, I got to know the community in policy terms quite well, and worked a lot with Kelly directly as she was launching the Technicians Commitment. And we were bringing together research councils, the Wellcome Trust, all sorts of other bodies like Universities UK and everybody else. And that role continued as part of my job in the Wellcome Trust when we were looking at research culture. And I guess it's as part of that. And I was also involved in the Research Career Concordat, which I think, neatly dovetail in many ways. And it was as part of that I got appointed to the technicians, the Talent Commission report and the subgroup that was working on that. So long history to it, quite circuitous in many ways, but I think it's a long-held passion that came through in the jobs that I was lucky enough to do that got me integrated into that network.
And what do you think the talent report has achieved?
Separating the talent report out from all the work that led to it is quite hard, I think, because it's not a single report that delivers or achieves anything. What it does do, though, is it gives, I think, extra gravitas to the situation and the importance of the role of technicians in the research and innovation ecosystem. It does provide some very clear frameworks for ways in which, universities, institutions, managers, technicians can all come together to sort of integrate and make things clearer and better. I think it will play a significant role for many years to come, and is sort of a key part of the way in which the Research Excellence Framework appraisals are being discussed at the moment. What it does do is it provides an evidence base, a robust research evidence base for what's happening in the sector. So it's really the first of its kind. And interestingly, I'm still on the Technicians Commitment Steering Group. And, that is the bedrock. And how that becomes sustainable is really a critical part of the conversation at the moment. How do we build on it? Because I think the unique thing about that report and the technicians' commitment more generally is that it's come ground up, but it's had senior support, starting off with Boris as the Vice-Chancellor of Cambridge University at the time. And that is unique. It's not imposed at all. And I think for me, that's probably one of the most precious things about it. It's basically born out of individuals who are leading in their own areas, but it's actually evidence-based and it's making its way into policy.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. It was a fantastic report, and we've made a lot of use of it in the Technician Steering Committee. It's something that we can quote and kind of, when we talk to senior people in the university, we can kind of direct people to it. So it's really helped us, I think, in pushing the technician commitment in Edinburgh. And it's great to hear that you're still involved and that Edinburgh University has kind of got a foot in there, and you're still in that. You're still involved with the technician commitment.
Yeah, and I think the challenge, Lee, will become, as everybody looks at, what do we do next? I was also part of a group that worked across UKRI and UUK looking at all the, we used to call them the royal flush of concordats that exist. You've got integrity, you've got career concordat, you've got one on animals, you've got one on, all sorts of different things. And at the base level, the critical thing is actually, how do you support your staff to develop? How do you recognise what they do? How do you reward it? And how do you integrate it into the very fabric of what you do day to day? And that's sort of what the Technicians Commitment and the Talent Commission report have done. And I think one of the things for us, I still consider myself a technician in many ways, but a different type of technician. What we do, I think, is how we mainstream a lot of what we've done in Talent Commission and Technicians Commitment activity. Because none of what we're saying in any of that should be any different for any group of staff.
Yeah.
Really, in many ways.
And so, we've implemented quite a lot within Edinburgh, but there's still, I guess, things to be done. And what do you see as being the main thing that's missing, within Edinburgh, and then maybe more nationally? Where would you like to see this go?
I think it's a great cornerstone that we've got. You, as everybody else in HEIs, will probably have read, about the state of the sector and the financial challenges we're facing, and whether the model is fit for purpose for the future. I think it's a unique opportunity, really, for us to think about what people have been talking about for a little while around the whole concept of team-based science. And, what does that really mean in reality? And how does that change our operating model in terms of how we plan, how we budget, how we, provide assurances for individuals who are working in the system, as much as one can ever do so. And I think, if you look at some of the things that have challenged the technical side, the use of fixed term contracts, the use of all sorts of different things that you don't see in some other places. I think as we reimagine what the university is going to look like and do, it's beholden on us to think about, how we integrate the whole, recognizing that obviously we've got to have a robust business plan that's efficient and effective, but not to separate the various parts of it out. So I think that's the next step that we've got to take. And that's the hard bit, right? Because it cuts across quite a lot of the way in which institutions have worked in the past. But I think it's a great opportunity. And I think Edinburgh is poised in a really good position, actually.
Yeah, that's great. And for anyone who hasn't come across the talent report, we will put a link to it in all of our show notes and on the website, so you can get that easily if you're interested in having a read after that. But Anne-Marie, the conversation around research culture has been gaining momentum in recent years, and I was just wondering where you think technicians would fit into this.
So I think, as I mentioned, Charli, in my sort of initial comments, I think technical staff, technicians, professional services staff play an unbelievable pivotal role in the community life and the professional life of an institution, of a university. And those are outlined in the Talent Commission report. They're outlined in a lot of the work that the Technicians Commitment have done to date. And that is everything from, the technical expertise, the sort of, the planning, the troubleshooting, the risk management, the well-being of the teams around you, the contributions to teaching. All of that, and you notice I haven't quite answered your question yet, all of that is related to the culture and the community of an institution, of a department, of a school, of a college, whatever it might be. I always hesitate to use the phrase around research culture, because actually it's the culture of the way we work. It's not just, the culture of research. I think there are obviously some specifics around, research, and those are well documented. And if anyone hasn't read the the welcome report on, the culture of the sort of sector, again, I'll give you the link to have a look at that.
Oh yeah, that'd be great. Thanks.
It's quite stark in many ways. So what role does the technician and the technical community have? I think critical and pivotal. And, it's that parity of esteem between academic and professional colleagues, which is crucial, because it's really catching ourselves to think about how we lead, how we create the conditions for people to succeed, how we acknowledge the work that people do and don't claim it when it's not, it shouldn't be claimed in a particular direction. So I do think that the voice of the technical community, the professional services community, is critical. And in all of that, I bring our teaching technicians in. I would bring, our ISIT. I'd bring all sorts of, anybody who's undertaking a sort of expert professional role, right, which is complementary to that which the academic sector are working in. So I think it's huge. I think, we've got some commitment across the university. We've got excellent individuals like yourselves. We've got a very vibrant technician steering group at the University of Edinburgh. And lots of events happening. So I think it's definitely a critical part of what we do for culture across the institution, and of course that will contribute to research, to innovation, and to teaching, and actually in our college to clinical practice.
So, do you think there are potentially some cultural barriers that are still affecting how technicians can get involved in discussions about research, culture, or anything really that affects them?
I mean, there's always going to be barriers, I think, and that welcome report sets out some of them. And, some of that is around the hyper-competitiveness of the sector. What metrics do you need to succeed as an academic in the sector? There's a lot of work to try and shift that. I would say that actually one of the reasons I was so keen to come to Edinburgh after quite a long career in the research councils and the Wellcome Trust was my knowledge of the UK institutions was reasonable, I suppose. And Edinburgh always stood out as one that was hyper-collegiate in the way that it worked, generally really sort of super cooperative. And it wasn't, one of the ones you'd go, oh, dear me, we might see a few things here. So I think in terms of cultural barriers, I think there are lots of pockets of activity across the colleges and the university with our, corporate services and USG colleagues that are trying to join this up and trying to help us sort of embed it. It's a big institution, isn't it? And so we're always going to find barriers. The work that's going on with the Technician Steering Committee in terms of thinking, how does the technical voice get represented? How do we think about making sure that we are integrating that into policy decisions, I think is key. And I think the role, and technicians have never been a group that have sat down and said, we'll wait for something to happen. They've always got up and done something. And I would say actually the critical role is to keep that dialogue going, keep that conversation happening. And at the same time, what we need to do is find opportunities, whether it's, strategy setting, whether it's operational discussions about how we redo our operating framework, making sure that we've got the right people around the table. And so what I would say to colleagues who are on the technical level is if there's something you're interested in making a difference to, then ask. If you don't know the answer, somebody you ask may. If they don't, then they should hopefully. And, I'm very happy to follow up with anybody, hopefully not thousands and thousands, who might like to sort of talk about particular things they're interested in. Because I think there are many opportunities at the moment to get involved as we shape our future. But I would also say, not everybody needs to be involved in everything. That's the other one. But find ways to contribute, because if we take the lessons of the technicians' commitment in the talent report, it's about evidence gathering. It's about shaping and experimenting with the ways we're working. And it's about, telling the story locally, college level, school level, institutional level, that will help us. So that was quite a long, woolly, fluffy answer. But there will be barriers, but let's not let them get us down.
Thinking about barriers, I guess there is a lot going on in the university at the moment. Within our college, we've got the college modernisation and kind of changes to the six school way of working. But I guess more widely within the university, there are the kind of financial issues that we're hearing about. I know you spend a lot of time going to town halls, Anne-Marie, and answering these kind of questions, but maybe a chance for a wider audience here. But, what do you see as being the particular problems or solutions that technicians can bring along. You know, I kind of my kind of feeling is that a lot of this is happening, and technicians take a step back, and I guess worried, but without necessarily being as forthright as maybe academics are. We kind of hear, talking to colleagues, a lot of worry. A lot of people, kind of worried about their jobs, about increased workloads. Is there anything you can say along those lines?
Yeah, I mean, change and uncertainty are really difficult, aren't they? And that you could be forgiven for turning on any news program and thinking you'd rather not done that, for all sorts of reasons. What can I say? I think the important point to note is that, yes, the sector is going through some really challenging, and this is across the UK and actually across the globe in many ways. You just have to look at what's happening in the US to know that, there are huge challenges left, right, and centre. I think the important thing for people in the University of Edinburgh to sort of keep in mind is we are not in deficit. As an institution, we're not in deficit. We are trying to make sure that we create enough surplus that we can continue to do the really exciting things we want to do. And so to a degree, there's an element of, course correction in terms of what we need to sort of do. And as you'll have seen from Peter and Kim's presentations, which are online, and if you haven't seen them, have a quick watch, is that really what we're trying to do is our spend is ramping up at a rate that exceeds the amount of income we're bringing in, whether that's through students, research, innovation, philanthropy, whatever. That's the sort of bottom line. So the sort of critical role of technical staff, I think, has never been even more important, because if you think about, but we will need to shift and change some of the models. So if I take the college, for example, those of you who are, running facilities, contributing to doing all those sorts of things, it is your daily bread and butter to be thinking about business planning, right? That's not necessarily the case everywhere. We are going to be needing to think about that on a scale that is larger than just a local facility, right? So we need to be thinking about how we're doing the business planning at college. What I would urge is that when we're thinking about what's happening, and I know, Lee, you get involved in some of these conversations more generally, is who else are doing similar things to what we're doing? If we were going to be really strategic about what we wanted to do in area X, what are the other bits around the university that might be doing things that are related? Is this an opportunity to be thinking about actually how we could be quite strategic and visionary in terms of what we'd like to achieve, and what would that take? And so all the skills that you've got about understanding the technology, the trends in where things are going, how the technology is developing, what we might need in terms of data analytics or all those sorts of things, and coming together and thinking about a business plan. So I know it can be very worrying, but in a way, this is a massive opportunity to be thinking about what is it that we could be doing even better. And, we've all sat there and said, I wouldn't start from this point. Well, we don't have to, in a way. We can think about, where it would make sense to join up and be quite creative. So I think the business planning, your knowledge of how the sector is evolving and the technologies are evolving is really fundamentally crucial for us. So I think there are opportunities, but that doesn't get away from the fact that there is a worrying situation, and it won't be the same for everybody. And there will be, some areas that we are absolutely going to push, and there will be other areas that we might need to think about, right sizing or shaping in a slightly different way. So what would I say? I would say to anybody that's concerned, talk to your manager, talk to people who are in, the area that you're interested in, think about ways in which that might evolve. And, as I say, happy to pick up detailed conversations, come and do a technical town hall if that's any use whatsoever. And don't be quiet, basically, but be creative. Help us be as creative as we can.
Yeah, that's right. I think we need to advocate for ourselves. We need to, not just be speaking to people like you and me who kind of get it because you've been involved for many years, but to everybody in the university, and keep advocating for the importance of technical roles.
Yeah. The other thing I would say to that, Lee, sorry to cut over, is actually there's nothing quite like case studies. This is what we're doing. These are the contributions it makes. This is a critical part. It's actually your point about advocating, yes, but telling the story. because, although I can advocate generally, I don't have all the specific details or the local stories that actually, just make people go, wow, actually, that's incredible. We did not know that was happening. I think we make assumptions about what other people know, and very often that's not the case. They have no idea. So we've got some amazing stories to tell, and I think incredible contributions. And as we're thinking about, for example, how we construct our models for what we do for teaching and how we might run shared facilities and all those sorts of things, the role of the technicians are crucial in all of that.
Yeah, and hopefully this series of podcasts, we're helping tell people's stories. If you're a technician, you've got an interesting story, do get in touch. We'd love to have you on, and we can sing your praises to the wider university.
We always ask our guests, Anne-Marie, if they've got any advice for someone looking to do a similar role to them. Are you able to answer that question for us?
Gosh, similar role. I think it depends which one, right? So I'd say just be curious. And don't feel shy of, asking people who are doing roles that you're interested in, how you might get some experience, what sorts of things you might think about. There's something about networking, and I think technical teams are very good at doing that, some better than others, but, your network is sometimes what opens your eyes to opportunities. I didn't even know this was a job that existed when I started out. Certainly didn't know that working at the research councils was something that was going to take a couple of decades of my working career, but actually it was incredibly rewarding. And I think for me it was the aspect of curiosity. So I would say be curious. The world is changing very rapidly around us, and you as technical individuals are sort of at the forefront of that. Your technology is changing all the time. The legislation is changing around you. But just be curious. And if you're interested in policy, think about what type of policy role it might be, or you're interested in shaping how your area might work or join up with others. Find people who can help you experiment with that, or make contacts that will help you think about it in a different way. And be open. Be open to the fact that you have got a life experience that is yours. You are aware of people who have other life experiences who are within your inner circle, but you don't know about that whole world out there that you've not yet met. So always be open to the fact that whilst you might have very strong views about a particular course of action, there might be others who have quite different views who actually, when you combine them, could lead you to something really very special.
That's amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for joining us and sharing your views on things just now.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to Technically Edinburgh. For more information about technicians at the University of Edinburgh, please go to www.technicians.ed.ac.uk. You can also email us at technician.network@ed.ac.uk and follow us on LinkedIn, Blue Sky and Instagram. The links are in the show notes. Please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and consider leaving us a review. Let us know how you're finding the show. Now, next month is our birthday, and we have a special mini-series planned to celebrate. So have a great month, and we'll see you then.